What's up, everybody? I'm Jason's the Freebird Garage, and we are back on the FXRT project. I forgot what part this is, but we are reinstalling now some parts on the motor. It's been a while, there's been a hiatus, and I'm back with it. We have a table that's been cleaned off. I have a table behind me that's been cleaned off. My garage has been cleaned up because to do this install, everything was driving me up the wall of how many parts I had laid out. And I just wanted things to be organized, to be able to install correctly. Otherwise, when you're disorganized, you're gonna miss something, screw, bolt, whatever it is. But we are putting it back together. And today is very important because we are doing some cylinder studs on this Evo, this 1988 Evo to be exact. And there's some major differences of installing new studs if you go and do this, and there's a reason why you want to replace it if you think that you want to get away from replacing yours if you're getting down to that top end. All right, so let's get over to the bench. We'll check out some studs, go for some examples, tell you what we're doing. Let's get done. All right, we're talking about cylinder studs on an Evo. There's a lot to know about, or maybe a little bit to know about, depending on what year and what you care about. Now, if you are in the 80s of your Evo, there's been some changes. A lot of times people believe that the Evos are all the same. From the outside, they do look the same. From the heads, the cylinders, the casing, they all generally look the same, but they changed quite a bit throughout the years. From the crank, the heads, the cylinders, the studs, things have been moved on for improvement throughout the years. And we're gonna be talking about, of course, the cylinder studs. In 85 and below is when the first gen or the first designed stud came out, and it had a head, or let's see if I can show you on this picture here. It's hard to tell. I'll have to just pop one up there. But it was more of like a cylinder on top that you would drive right into the case itself. And then from there, it changed in 87. So 84, 85 was your Evo. Before that was the shovel, completely different motor. Everything's different from that point. We're just talking about Evo FXRs. But then in 87, they switched to more of a standard stud right there. And you have a shoulder and then the open end on that side. And when it was installed shoulder up, cylinder or threads down into your casing. They did that all the way up until, with my two manuals up here, that covers for us from 84 all the way to 90, and then I have my 91 to 92 book. In 1993, they switched to a head breather. Now these are all bottom breather. So that's another part that changed. And I believe in 93, I can't contest because it could have been actually in 94, because then there was the primary change, a little more upgrading, and then even into, of course, like the later 90s of the FLHs when the FXRs weren't made, they started still designing and want improvement on the Evo itself. So what they did was originally this stud was installed, like I said, like this with the shoulder up. And when that was done, it is said in the service manual, you get a impact. They don't want to use a ratchet. They don't want to use a breaker bar because you can bend the stud while it's inside the casing, of course. And then you take the head bolt right here, and it's hard to tell from the camera, but inside there's a little bevel. And what you do is you get a ball bearing, you drop that in there, and then you take this cylinder stud and drive it right on top, and then you would drive it into the case, and that's how they would actually install those. And when they did that, you had to know from how it was installed from the factory where the markings were on this. So if you pulled it apart and you were going to use the original ones, there was a line, and so you would drive your impact, your air impact down, and essentially hit where you need to go. And it's the same for 85 and below, so then all the way up to 87 and up, until I would assume 93. Like I said, I don't have a service manual to tell you exactly, but in that time, that's when it changed. And when it changed, they took this cylinder stud and then just simply flipped it. They took the shoulder right there, plopped it in, and then locked it until it pretty much was set. So there wasn't much to be said from there. That was the improvement. All I did was take that stud and flip it, and then put some Loctite on it and called it good. So there's a lot to be said on Evos, differences, and this is just one example. And if you're not paying attention, you can get yourself into a big hurt because you're usually pulling these top ends apart because your cylinders are leaking from the bottom, the base gaskets. That's why mine's being torn apart right now. There was a leak, there's enough miles on it where it just needs to be redone, and these are notorious for top end rebuilds. So if you have a high mileage Evo you just got, whether it be an FLH or you have even a Dyna from FXRs, Sportsters, and you need to rebuild the top end, this is all things to consider when you're going into it. Stuff that I've had to go back and forth whether or not I wanted to change it, upgrade it, is it something that's going to interfere later down the road, and this is something they definitely want to change. The other part that they note, and I've seen in forums, this one's pretty clean here. There's a chewed up one right here. So that's from removing it, and unfortunately I didn't have any great removal tool, so I knew I was going to replace them, so I just used vice grips and ripped apart. Knowing that and seeing how beat up I'm going to replace it, it was kind of a no-brainer to do that. But the other part that you really want to replace these with when you're doing it is that your threads on here. Every time you pull out studs, particularly in a high torque area, you're stretching the threads. You don't see it, but there's a lot that goes on in there. Heat cycles, hot and cold, of course, and then of course just impacting and the tension that you have on those studs. So that's why you also want to replace it. And the other thing that they know is if there's any marks on these studs. So if you go and beat this thing up and then go and reinstall the old one, you're just asking for a problem. Now you might not have one when it goes back in, everything's good to go. You're gonna eventually have a problem, or your next owner might have a problem, maybe 10,000 miles in or what. So that's definitely something that you want to consider. And I wasn't planning on replacing these. When I first had them, they looked fine, everything looked great. But after looking up some forums, talking to some mechanics, it was just kind of, you're in there, replace them, pull them out. They're cheap enough to replace. I think the bag that I have, they're replacing them with, is an S&S replacement. These are awesome. This covers you for all the years. From 84 to 99 that are on here. This is a 31, 23, 21 right there. I actually bought these from Plymouth Cycle in Westland, Michigan. So if you're looking for certain parts, you can always call up some of your local mechanic shops and see if you can get some right studs for it. Otherwise, go online and check out the part number. They'll pretty much cover you. So you can change out the early 85 with those as far as what's told by S&S with those ones and everything. So you can do the flip, fix it and correct it. As some say, it's an upgrade from what you had obviously previously. That's just essentially a rundown of why we're going to be replacing these studs. If you're seeing the shoulders flipped, some have said that's incorrect. The shoulder needs to be up, the shoulder needs to be down. So kind of just clearing the wave out of this. And even in the service manual that has me covered for all my years, it doesn't state actually to flip it, because in the later years they did state that. I don't have my book here, but enough research has shown that's what you do. And when you do that, you essentially just run some Loctite, and then I have a tool that I've created. I'll show you that right now here actually, that we are going to run. So there's a new stud, and then good. Roll that down, then use a new bolt right there, Allen head style. There's probably another name for it, but I don't know it offhand. And that's going to create us an installation. So you'll lock it down and then turn it just until it hits the bottom shoulder there, and then we'll be good to go. So we're going to go ahead and get the base cleaned up and get these studs installed. In the last series of the videos, we have the cam installed already. This area has been cleaned up. I just didn't get to the base gasket area yet for the cylinder heads. This is an EV cam 27 that we actually installed, spaced it correctly, went into the full depth because there's also differences of years of when the cam was spaced and not spaced. So if you're installing a cam, go check that video out. Should hopefully get you in the right spot. All right, so we're gonna get into here, get it done. Everything's cleaned up. Let's get these studs installed. I already have my tool already started on here. We're going to now throw some thread locker on here. Just get it nice, caved up there. Okay. That's all in those threads. Good there. And we'll start off with this one right here. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna snug it down first. And then I've read right around a 10 foot-pound, so we're gonna throw a torque spec on there. Relates to the shoulder, down on the base, and then we'll see where it lands. The stud install. We are good to rock and start installing the rest, piston, cylinder heads, and a little bit of timing we have to do. Also a carburetor, of course, but every step of the way I'm trying to show it spec by spec through the book, why we're doing it, every upgrade we got to do, and anything that I can catch to hopefully help anyone else out there doing the same thing. If you have any questions, follow my Instagram below, and as always guys, if you have made it all the way through, I would greatly appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button, tap that like, press the notification, leave a comment below and tell me what you think, and for those who already subscribed, thank you, and as always, stay free. I'll catch you guys later. Peace!